You ever get that feeling that the game is rigged before you even step onto the field? I'm talking about that Saturday morning when you're scrolling through Zillow, looking at some tiny, run-down, two-bedroom house that's listed for $500,000. You think, okay, it's ugly, but I can fix it. Then you see the notification. Sold. Cash offer. 20% over asking. No inspection. And you're just sitting there with your pre-approval letter and your saved-up down payment, feeling like a total idiot. Well, look, I've been digging into the numbers, and honestly, it's not just in your head. You're not failing. You're being out-hustled by a machine. See, we've been told the American dream is about working hard and buying that starter home. But in 2026, that starter home doesn't exist anymore. It's been snatched up, not by a family, but by a line of code. A billion-dollar algorithm that can buy a house faster than you can even refresh the page. We're witnessing the forensic death of homeownership. And the scary part? This isn't just about high interest rates or the economy. This is about a fundamental shift in who owns the dirt you walk on. You're not competing with the couple down the street. You're competing with Wall Street. They don't want you to be an owner. They want you to be a permanent subscriber to your own life. So I'm not here to give you some 5 tips to save for a house speech. That's garbage. I'm here to perform an autopsy on the housing market and show you exactly who stole the dream, and more importantly, how you can actually survive in a world where the starter home has become a corporate asset. It's time to stop playing their game and start looking at the crime scene for what it really is. Let's trace the money. Look, we need to have a very honest conversation about what actually happened to the starter home. Because you aren't crazy. You aren't bad with money. And you aren't failing at life just because you can't buy a 3-bedroom house on a dual income. The reality is, the bottom rungs of the property ladder didn't just rot away. They were systematically sawed off. Back in the day, a residential builder bought dirt, built a subdivision, and sold those properties to young families. That was the American dream ecosystem. Today, they are building for portfolios. When a massive developer looks at a plot of land in places like Phoenix, Atlanta, or Dallas, they aren't picturing swing sets. They are looking at the build-to-rent model. They are constructing entire neighborhoods that will never, ever have a for sale sign in the front yard. They go straight from the construction crew into the asset column of an institutional landlord like Blackstone or Vanguard. You are literally watching houses being built on your own streets that you are legally barred from ever buying. And honestly, let's talk about what happens when you try to bid on one of the few houses that actually makes it to the open market. You do everything right. You save the 20%, you get your pre-approval, and your credit score is flawless. You walk into this open house and start doing what humans do, getting emotional. You picture where the couch goes. You calculate if you can handle the monthly payment at a brutal interest rate, but your opponent doesn't have a heartbeat. Your opponent is a line of code. You are bidding against a corporate algorithm. These trillion-dollar funds have software that scans the market 24 hours a day. They have ruthless parameters. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, specific zip code, priced under $500,000, projected rental yield of 6%. The absolute millisecond a human lists a house that fits that box, the bot triggers. It generates an all-cash offer, 20% over the asking price, no inspection required, closing in 7 days. By the time you pull out of the driveway to call your realtor, the deal is dead. You didn't lose to a better, harder working family. You lost to a faster processor and a bottomless pit of institutional capital. You are bringing a knife to a drone fight. Here is where the urban economics of this crime scene get really dark. I call it the rent trap feedback loop. Because these massive funds own so many single-family houses in the exact same neighborhoods, they stop participating in the market and start dictating it. If a hedge fund owns 20% of the rental inventory in your zip code, they establish a spatial monopoly. They use algorithmic pricing software to coordinate massive rent increases across entire regions simultaneously. So, your lease is up. They hike your rent by $400 a month. You get angry, look around to move. But every other corporate landlord in a 20-mile radius just hiked their rent too. You have no choice but to pay it. And that extra $400, that was the margin you were putting into your savings account for your down payment. poof, it vanishes. You are working 50 hours a week just to fund the exact same entity that is mathematically ensuring you can never afford to buy. You aren't just a tenant. You are a living, breathing annuity. I hear people coping with this reality by saying, I'm just going to wait for the crash. It's 2008 all over again. Look at the forensic data, not your emotions. Do not hold your breath for a 2008 repeat. In 2008, we had a massive supply glut. Anyone with a pulse could get a subprime mortgage. And when those adjustable rates reset, millions of panicked, over-leveraged, everyday people had to sell at the exact same time. That causes a crash. Panic and oversupply. In 2026, we have supply strangulation. We are short millions of homes. And these corporate landlords aren't panicked everyday people worried about losing their jobs. They have diamond hands. They are holding these properties for 30 years, strictly for the cash flow. If interest rates go up, they just raise your rent to cover their spread and wait for the Federal Reserve to blink. Waiting for a crash in a market where supply is artificially choked off is like waiting for a blizzard in the desert. You're just going to die of thirst while you wait. We also have to factor in the local gatekeepers. In almost every major American city right now, it is quite literally illegal to build anything other than a massive, sprawling, single-family home. You want to buy a small plot of land and build a duplex? Illegal. A tiny home? Illegal. A small condo building near a transit line? The local zoning board will laugh you out of the room. The people who bought their houses 30 years ago for the price of a used car are now sitting on city councils, blocking any new construction to artificially protect their inflated property values. By refusing to let the housing supply grow to meet the demand, they are guaranteeing that you will be a renter forever, while their net worth climbs into the millions. It is a generational wealth transfer happening in plain sight. So what do you actually do? Because sitting around your overpriced apartment being angry at Wall Street isn't going to put a roof over your head. You have to stop playing their game on their turf. You need a tactical strategy. The first move is a geographic arbitrage audit. If you are trying to buy your first home in a trendy Tier 1 city, you are fighting a war inside the enemy's headquarters. You are fighting the bots where they have the most data and money. Look for the blind spots. Look for the secondary and tertiary markets, places where the algorithms haven't fully optimized the dirt yet, but where the economy is actually growing. If you can work remotely, or if your skills transfer, your greatest financial weapon is not your salary. It is your mobility. The minute you stop being tethered to a highly optimized zip code, you break the corporate landlord's leverage over your life. You go where the dirt is still priced like dirt, and you buy before the corporations set up their regional offices. The second move is killing the romantic illusion of the American dream. Forget the beautiful, quiet oasis where you sip coffee on the porch. That is a luxury you cannot afford right now. Your first home in this economy cannot be a consumer item. It has to be a business. I'm talking about house hacking. If you do manage to buy a duplex. Buy a property with a basement you can legally rent out. Buy a place with 3 bedrooms and aggressively rent out the other 2. You need someone else's income to offset that brutal interest rate. The only mathematical way to beat the corporate landlord is to become a micro landlord yourself. If you buy a house purely to live in, you are bleeding capital. If you buy a house that pays its own mortgage, you are building an empire. And look, I know this sounds harsh, but we have to talk about the vibe tax. I talk to so many smart, high-earning people who are dead broke because they refuse to leave the cool city. They stay in high-rent urban cores because they like the walkability, the aesthetic, the craft breweries. You are paying a massive, invisible tax for that atmosphere. If you spend $3,500 a month on rent just to be near a good coffee shop, you are subsidizing an institutional investor's portfolio, while your own net worth flatlines. Sometimes, the most mathematically sound thing you can do is accept short-term deprivation for long-term optionality. Move to the boring, ugly suburb. Do it for 3, maybe 4 years. Slash your overhead in half, hoard cash like a maniac, and build the capital required to force your way back into the game on your own terms. Finally, we need to completely rewire how we view success. The ultimate trap is the home ownership obsession. We have been brainwashed to believe that if you don't own a deed to a piece of land, you are a second-class citizen. But let me tell you something. If the math in your specific city is broken, and in a lot of cities right now, it is literally twice as expensive to own a home as it is to rent the exact same home, then do not buy. Do not let societal pressure drive you into a 30-year debt contract that will choke the life out of you. A house is a forced savings account, but it is also a highly illiquid, incredibly expensive anchor. When you buy a house at the top of your budget, you are paying skyrocketing property taxes, maintenance, and insurance. Take that massive difference, the extra $2,000 or $3,000 a month you would have been burning on a bloated mortgage, and shove it aggressively into liquid assets. I'm talking index funds, high-yield bonds, assets you can turn into cash in 48 hours with the push of a button. In a world where the starter home has been stolen, your greatest protection isn't a piece of paper saying you own a roof. Your greatest protection is a liquid portfolio that gives you the absolute power to walk away. Think about the psychology of it. A guy with a massive mortgage, a huge property tax bill, and $5,000 in his checking account is the perfect compliant citizen. His boss owns him. He can't quit a job he hates because he has to pay the mortgage on the first of the month. He is a debt slave to a pile of bricks. But a guy who rents a modest apartment, drives a paid-off car, and has $500,000 sitting in a brokerage account, that guy is dangerous. He has optionality. If his landlord raises the rent to a stupid number, he leaves. If his boss disrespects him, he walks out the door. He doesn't need the bank or the corporation. The game is rigged, yes. The corporations optimize the dirt for their own spreadsheets, not for your family. But their weakness is that they are giant, slow, and completely reliant on you staying in the exact spot they want you to stay in. You can be fast. You can be mobile. You can be liquid. You can be the person who looks at the math, realizes the casino is cheating, and simply refuses to sit at the table. Stop looking for a house to validate your existence and start looking for an edge. Stop buying into the vibe and start buying your own freedom. Because when you're 65 years old, the dirt you live on doesn't matter nearly as much as the time you actually own. So here is the final forensic verdict. The system wants you to feel like a failure if your name isn't on a deed. They want you desperate, stressed out, and over-leveraged because a desperate employee is exactly what keeps their whole machine running. But now you have the autopsy report. You see the math. You don't have to play a rigged game. You can choose liquid wealth over a pile of overpriced bricks. You can choose actual, untouchable freedom over the corporate illusion of the American dream. The dirt doesn't make you rich. The options do. If this file helped you see the housing trap for what it really is, hit that like button. It tells the algorithm we're waking up. And I want to hear your forensic report in the comments. Are you currently paying the vibe tax in a big city? Or have you already made the move to build your freedom fund? I read every single one of your stories. Hit subscribe to keep opening these files with me. I'm Jim. Stay liquid, stay dangerous, and I'll see you in the next one.